Hello, my brothers, my sisters, my non-binary babes. My name is Chelsea and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am here today to react to one of my favorite YouTubers. Her name is Ashley. She has a channel called Best Dressed. She does a lot of fashion videos. She'll put together like different outfit ideas. I've seen her do like a couple thrift flips. But mostly the reason I like her content is because it's more like an experience, like more like her videos are just aesthetic, you know what I mean? I saw she uploaded a video today called Sewing a Dress from Scratch, and that piqued my interest. So to give a little bit of background to those who don't know me, my name is Chelsea. I've been sewing for about 6-7 years. I do a lot of garment sewing. My favorite things to sew are jumpsuits and jeans, and I've been dabbling a little bit in dresses and like more frilly girly blouses. I don't have any formal training, I just kind of am self-taught. I wanted to make this video as sort of like a seamstress react type thing, and I love Ashley, so I know she's going to be amazing at this, so let's just get into it.
To give you guys a little background about my sewing experience, basically growing up, my mom would always sew like Halloween costumes or like little matching dresses for me and my sister, but I would never really developed an interest in fashion. So by the time middle school came around, I decided I wanted to try sewing, but I was also very stubborn as a child. I decided that I didn't want to start with patterns because that would be like somebody else telling me what to do, and I didn't really like the designs that they offered. So I tried to make my patterns from scratch, and it's actually really fucking hard. So I like tried to make myself a dress, but like I completely miscalculated everything. It didn't really fit right. I had like no darts for like my tiny little 12-year-old boobs. Needless to say, none of those clothes turned out very well.
Lots of people don't want to start with sewing patterns because they feel like they don't like the designs, or they feel like it's too complicated. You pull everything out of this envelope and you know, spread out this big piece of tissue paper and you're like, what do I do? You know what I mean? But I feel like it's so important to learn how to do these basic things, and doing that with like an easy pattern will really teach you those basic skills that you need to know in order to build upon that and eventually learn how to draft your own patterns. I have just kind of started drafting my own patterns in the last couple years, and it is hard, and I definitely would not have been able to do that had I not had that sewing experience and a little bit of like pattern modification experience before diving into all of that, because it's a whole nother ballgame.
It kind of shattered my incredibly fragile middle schooler ego, and I never made clothes from scratch again. That is until today. Dun dun dun. Anyways, I went online and I picked up some vintage patterns from Etsy. They all have this like lovely gathering detail, ruching detail, cool necklines, all of the stuff that I like. So yeah, I'm gonna sew one of them, which I guess you already knew from clicking on the title.
Is she gonna use a vintage pattern?
So there's 3 minutes of your life you're never gonna get back.
I'm so excited. If she's gonna use a vintage pattern, I'm so excited. She's going to mood. Oh my gosh.
Take my hand, shop and see. Only get paid, I want me. We can couple, I can drive. Listen to Jackson 5.
Is the next day, because I thought going to mood would take like 15 minutes. It turns out I was in there for 2.5 hours, where you just enter like a fugue state. You lose track of time. You forget who you are. You just start wandering the aisles, eyes glazed over, unsure of your purpose in life. I did end up finding some fabric that I liked, so I ended up going for this admittedly more complicated pattern.
Wow, so that pattern looks a little intense. It looks like she's got some gathering on the bust, she's got gathering on the sleeves, she's got an ampere waistline, a center front seam, very fitted from the underbust down to the hips. She's got some good techniques in here, and I would be super impressed if she's able to pull this off.
So I ended up just getting one solid fabric to make the entire dress. This fabric drapes and moves so beautifully, which is what I...
She's going for a silk charmeuse.
I wanted because of like the long flowy skirt on this dress. I really wanted something that would like move with my body.
That's gonna be beautiful.
Really nicely. I also got some eyelets for the front and sleeve details on the dress, some trim to make little bows, a matching zipper, and some thread.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maxwell Landry.
I love the music she chooses for her videos.
Oh baby, first you make your dough and you roll out the crust. While we're working on the ladders, I'm my butter, yeah,
So it looked like she knew what she was doing when she was pinning her stuff. She was very aware of the grain line. She knew that you needed to keep it exactly parallel to the selvage, which is very impressive. I'm glad she knew that because that's a big one. She also didn't look like she was having too much trouble cutting out that silk, which, girl, tell me your secrets because... She's got a nice machine too.
Before I start sewing my actual dress, I thought I would do a little fabric test on this kind of fallopian tubes shaped scrap of fabric. Naturally, I decided to start my first sewing project in like 10 years with one of the most flimsy, pain in the ass.
Okay, so she is very smart. She knows that you need to test out your thread tension and stuff like that first on the same fabric that you're going to use for your project. But a little tip that maybe you wouldn't think of when you're doing your tension test on your scrap, fold it over so that you're actually sewing on 2 layers because you're never going to be sewing on just 1 layer of fabric. And most of the time when you fold it over and you've got 2 layers in there, it makes it a little bit more sturdy and easier to sew. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm very happy that she knew to do this.
Fabrics to sew, which as you can see here, just does not take particularly well to being stabbed repeatedly. Luckily, thanks to my guardian angels, the DIY moms of YouTube, I was able to find this tissue paper technique to help my seams lay flat. Basically, you sandwich your fabric between 2 layers of tissue paper to help stabilize it and prevent it from getting like sucked into the abyss of the bottom of the sewing machine.
Yes, she knows the tissue paper trick. Which she was referencing Professor Pincushion's videos, which shout out to her, she's awesome. And I'm glad that she's reaching out for some of these like tips and tricks to help her make her sewing easier, because if you just do a couple things in the beginning, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And I actually have a tip to stiffen swishy fabrics like this, and I have it over on my Instagram. Go follow me at chelseymakes on Instagram. I share some of my sewing tips and I save them to my highlights, so I highly suggest going over and follow me on there if you want more tips like this.
Here is my first seam. It honestly does not look like a complete f***ing disaster yet, so that's a good sign. Alrighty, so here we have my soon-to-be boob panel of the dress. So the front of the dress is supposed to have this ribbon running through it that you can tie and tighten, kind of like a shoelace, like a boob shoelace is
That's beautiful.
the technical term. So in order to install that, I needed to use some eyelets, which are essentially little like metal hole stretchers. To install the little fabric, you just make a little hole, put one through the back, put one through the front, use some protection in the form of this metal tool that comes with the package, hammer it out a little bit, and pray your next door neighbor doesn't complain about the noise. Okay, this is how it came out with the eyelets. And I'm not gonna lie, she's looking kind of tortured.
Okay, but listen, once you put that string in there and you gather it up, most of these mistakes are not going to be visible.
If you hammer them just a little too hard, they get all squashed like this one. If you don't cut the hole big enough, it gets all wrinkly like this one. But I didn't buy enough eyelets in order to remake this piece of the dress, so I'm kind of just gonna run with it and hope that once I put the ribbon through it and it's all gathered up, people will be distracted from the fact that this looks kind of f***ed up. Okay, update. This flap of fabric is what I have labored for 3 hours to create. This is almost the entire front of the dress, minus the sleeves and the bow. So now I'm just going to attach it to the back of the dress.
I'm really impressed with her that she was able to do that gathering so seamlessly, and she didn't seem like she had any issues with it, so I'm impressed.
As the sun set and my matcha high faded, things started to take a little bit of a turn for the worse. Nothing disastrous happened until it came time to install the invisible zipper, at which point I realized I don't own a zipper foot, nor do I have any experience whatsoever installing zippers. At first, I tried sewing it with a regular foot, but I kept swerving over the plastic part of the zipper, which you're not supposed to do at all, and I managed to break.
Press open your invisible zipper. Put your iron on kind of a lower-ish heat. You can press open that invisible zipper, and I sew my invisible zippers with a regular all-purpose foot. I don't use a zipper foot. I especially do not use an invisible zipper foot. I don't know how people use them. They have never been helpful to me, so I just use a regular foot. And I also will hand baste my invisible zippers in first, and when you take it to the machine, all that hand basting is going to make your life a lot easier.
3 needles.
I have been trying to seam rip this invisible zipper without a seam ripper. So I've been trying to do it with a needle and sewing scissors. Do you know how hard that is?
Yes, I do.
Silk. 1 invisible zipper and a slight mental breakdown later, my dress was looking like a bad, sexy Statue of Liberty Halloween costume, and my floor was looking like a small raccoon had broken into my apartment. And or I had just come back. Nevertheless, eventually I pulled myself together and sewed on some sleeves and put together the final finishing touches.
She's gonna show us what it looks like. That is so cute! Okay, I am totally impressed that she pulled this off. This looks so cute. Totally, like, fits her vibe. That gathering looks even. The spot where she put the eyelets and then she laced it up with that ribbon, it looks awesome. And it fits her perfect. It looks like it fits her perfect. I mean, Ashley is very slim and she seems to be a standard size. She does have a smaller bust, but it looks like it fits her flawlessly. She literally looks like she just stepped right out of like a 40s pattern illustration. It looks so good.
Before I go, I wanted to leave you guys with a couple takeaways and things that I learned from my first sewing experiment. So my number 1 takeaway is that buying the right supplies is like half the battle when you're sewing. The second thing I learned is that it's so important to cut out your pattern carefully. I learned that when you're sewing from a pattern, it's so important to cut the shape exactly as it is, because then you end up using the edge of your cut line as a guide for where to sew. So if you cut your pattern all wonky, you're gonna end up sewing your lines wonky. Another thing I learned is that low-key, it's okay if you fuck up. Nobody really looks that closely at your clothing.
That is so true. Like, when people learn how to sew and they start making garments and they're not absolutely perfect, because let's face it, we're home sewists, like, they're not going to be perfect. They feel like everybody's going to see this mistake and no one is looking at your mistakes. They're just going to be so excited that you made something by yourself that they are not going to be looking for mistakes. They're just going to be like, whoa, that's so fucking cool. Like, you made that? That's crazy. No way. No one's going to see your mistakes like you see them. But mistakes are learning opportunities. Her mistakes with this dress were her eyelets were too big and she didn't reinforce her fabric. She wasn't prepared for how to sew a invisible zipper. Oh, and she needed a seam ripper. I can't believe she didn't have a little tiny seam ripper that like comes with all the machines. But now she knows. It seems like she has taken those things into consideration for her next project, and I'm super excited to see her do that.
And my last lesson is to always, always, always trust the sewing moms of YouTube. They have got your back. It was actually really satisfying to see just a sheet of fabric turn into a full-fledged dress that I made from scratch. And it's so cool to wear this and be like, oh, I made this. That's so cool.
I love like seeing how proud she is of this dress, because it's gorgeous. Like, she should be super proud of it. I cannot believe that she sewed that by herself. Like, I was not sure how this was going to go, honestly. I'm so impressed with what she did, and I hope she continues to sew her own clothes. I think she is a natural at it, and I am so happy to see her with like that. I did this, like I made this by myself. Like, look at how cool this is. Like, I love seeing that on her. That is the best feeling ever when you make your own clothes and someone asks you, like, where did you get that denim jacket? And you're like, I made it. And they're like, nuh-uh. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Like, that's the coolest feeling in the world. When you wear something that you've made out in public and like you feel like all eyes are on you, it's like such a cool feeling. So I'm so happy for her that like her first project was not traumatizing and in fact like super motivating. I can't wait to see what else she sews. I follow her on Instagram. You should follow her on Instagram too. She's just Best Dressed on Instagram. Yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, you can go visit me on Instagram at chelseymakes. But other than that, just hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!